Picture this. You're sitting at the testing terminal, right? The clock is just ticking down, and you are staring at this massive scenario question on the SHRM SCP exam.
Oh, yeah, the classic high-stress moment. Every candidate knows that exact feeling.
Right. And the thing is, the question isn't asking you to just, recite some obscure labor law. It's asking you to navigate a complex, multinational dispute involving supply chains, deeply held religious beliefs, and a furious C-suite demanding an immediate resolution.
Which is incredibly daunting.
Totally. You are an experienced HR professional, you know your stuff, but in this moment, relying on your gut instinct or like the standard US company handbook, that's exactly what the test makers want you to do, and it is exactly how you fail that question.
It's the biggest trap on the board.
Yeah. So to pass, you need what SHRM calls a global mindset. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are tearing down exactly what that means, how cultural intelligence drives enterprise-level strategy, and really how you can master this behavioral competency for the exam.
Which, honestly, is the absolute bedrock of global and cultural effectiveness. And I think you're right to set the stakes so high right out of the gate.
Because it's not a joke, right?
Exactly. At the senior certified professional level, this isn't about passing a quiz on cultural trivia or, I don't know, knowing how to say hello in 5 different languages.
Right, it's way deeper than that.
It is about proving you can navigate immense ambiguity and leverage diverse perspectives to actually drive a multinational business forward.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because SHRM defines global mindset using a very specific set of KSAOs, knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics. And the core of it seems to be the capacity to value the perspectives of all parties, to interact effectively in a global context, and, well, to promote a culturally diverse and inclusive workplace.
Yeah, that's the textbook definition, and it really breaks down into 3 actionable pillars for the exam.
Okay, what's the first one?
First is operating in a diverse workplace. This just means demonstrating genuine openness when you're collaborating with people from completely different cultural traditions.
Openness, got it.
Right. Second is operating in a global environment, meaning you can effectively manage all those globally influenced workplace requirements to actually hit your organizational goals.
Because it's still a business at the end of the day.
Exactly. And the third pillar is advocating for an inclusive workplace. This is where you have to design and implement the actual policies that make inclusion a systemic reality, not just, a corporate buzzword.
I mean, we all hear about IQ, right? An EQ, emotional quotient, has been this gold standard in leadership for a decade now. But this competency introduces CQ, cultural quotient.
Yes, CQ is huge.
And from the source material, it's built on 3 components. You've got cultural knowledge, cross-cultural skills, and cultural metacognition. It's that third piece, the metacognition, that feels like the real differentiator here.
Oh, it absolutely is the separator. Cultural metacognition is essentially cultural mindfulness.
Mindfulness. How so?
It's the ability to recognize a unique cultural context, analyze the friction points, and then actively develop new strategies to work within them in real time.
I like to think of it through like a navigation analogy. Cultural knowledge is like having a static map of a city. You know where the major landmarks are? Like, you know that in Japan, you're supposed to present a business card with 2 hands.
Right. That's just a fact on a map.
Yeah. But cultural metacognition, that is your GPS. It's rerouting you in real time when a road is suddenly closed, or when a negotiation takes an unexpected turn and you have to adapt your communication style on the fly.
That is a perfect way to look at it, because the SHRM SCP exam loves to trap candidates who just memorize the map.
Right, just memorizing facts isn't enough.
No, memorizing facts is just the knowledge piece. The exam tests your skills and your metacognition. It's about adapting your actual behaviors. Furthermore, a massive part of CQ is recognizing our own unseen biases.
And unseen biases, yeah.
Right. Racial and religious biases are heavily prevalent. And obviously, while laws prevent using group memberships in employment decisions, unseen biases still dictate, who gets heard in a meeting or who gets tapped for leadership training.
So if personal CQ is the baseline here, how does this scale up to the institutional level? Because at the SCP level, you're not just administering diversity training on a Friday afternoon. You are sitting on an executive table answering heavy, strategic business questions.
Precisely. You have to ask the C-suite the hard questions, like, do we need radical change or will we move forward with incremental adjustments?
And are they actually willing to do it?
Exactly. Is the organization willing to rock the boat today, or is it riskier to maintain the status quo? Does our future business actually need entirely new skills compared to the talent profile we're comfortable hiring right now?
And that forces a really tough conversation about organizational culture because culture evolves directly from shared beliefs, but, and the source makes this clear, those beliefs have to be supported by strategy and structure.
They have to match.
Right. Like if a company claims, oh, we believe in customer service at the highest level, but then the executive team slashes the policies that support flexible working schedules and resources for the frontline staff, well, those beliefs ring hollow.
It creates a massive disconnect. You see managers who say, people are our most important asset, but then they build these rigid, unsupportive structures. They are actively destroying the organization's culture. You have to align the operational strategy with the stated global mindset.
But let's look at the reality of being an SCP level leader. Say you sit down with a stubborn executive board. They want to cut the budget for global inclusion initiatives because they view it as an HR vanity project.
A tale as old as time.
Right. So how do you prove the ROI? Because moral arguments rarely win boardroom budget battles.
What's fascinating here is the hard economic data. This isn't just nice to have, it is a measurable competitive advantage. McKinsey and Company conducted extensive studies on the return on investment from corporate diversity efforts.
But what do they find?
They found that companies in the top quartile for racial and ethnic diversity are 35% more likely to have financial returns above their respective national industry medians.
Wait, 35%?
35%.
That isn't a minor bump? That is a massive strategic advantage that directly impacts shareholder value.
It is. And for gender diversity, companies in the top quartile are 15% more likely to have returns above the national industry median.
Wow, 15%.
Yeah, because diversity brings entirely different problem-solving heuristics to the table. It shatters groupthink, which allows a company to innovate much faster than its homogenous competitors.
So on the exam, when you see a question about justifying D&I programs to skeptical leadership, the strategic SCP response relies on that business case and the economic ROI. It's not just about doing the right thing.
Exactly. You lean on the data.
Okay, so we have the strategic foundation. Now, how do we spot these concepts when they are actively hidden inside exam questions? Because test makers love to wrap a global mindset question in a heavy disguise.
They really do. You'll get a scenario that looks entirely like a supply chain issue, or an international expansion logistics problem, or even just a simple time zone scheduling conflict.
But it's actually testing your cultural metacognition.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the cognitive traps they set, starting with communication. Because it's dangerously easy to misinterpret a simple time zone delay as, like, a deliberate cultural insult or a sign of laziness.
Right. Like a U.S. manager might send an email to a partner in Asia and get incredibly frustrated when it takes 14 hours to get a reply.
Thinking they're being ignored.
Exactly. But it has nothing to do with work ethic. You are simply waiting for the Earth to rotate and their workday to begin. But candidates who lack global experience, they jump to punitive conclusions.
And it happens even within the same language. Take regional spelling differences, like spelling labor in U.S. English versus labor with a U in Great Britain and Australia.
It sounds minor, right? But cognitive bias makes us conflate fluency with competence.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, thinking that someone in a different culture is unintelligent just because they spell a word according to their regional norm or they use a different syntax, it immediately blocks the acceptance of any strategic value they have to offer.
Which perfectly sets up the bilingual reality check from the source text. Because if an employee struggles with English vocabulary, an American-centric mindset might just write them off as unqualified for leadership.
But the reality is only about 15% of Americans consider themselves bilingual.
15%, that's so low.
Right, and compare that to 56% of Europeans surveyed by the European Commission. Assuming someone lacks strategic vision just because they're searching for an English word completely ignores the fact that they're operating in their second, third, or fourth language.
It's a huge blind spot for leaders.
Huge.
There's also the U.S.-centric compliance trap. If your enterprise is based in the U.S., compliance with U.S. requirements is paramount. But forcing U.S. norms onto global partners when you operate in their sovereign space, that is a massive liability.
Exactly. Consider conducting business in Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
Foreigners expanding operations there absolutely must adapt to strict limits on public interaction between men and women. It is one of the most gender-segregated countries in the world.
Right. The norms are completely different.
Completely. Female businesswomen meeting male counterparts in public are often expected to be accompanied by a male colleague. So as an HR professional guiding this expansion, you cannot just copy-paste your U.S. corporate travel policy and force it onto that reality.
So if I can't just mandate a U.S. policy abroad, do I essentially have to become a geopolitical strategist just to run international
Well,
operations?
no, but you have to become intensely adaptable, and you have to know when to bring in local experts. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the shift SHRM wants to see is from rigid compliance-driven thinking to culturally intelligent leadership.
Relying on the right people.
Yes. When you expand into a new country, your closest ally should be a vetted international labor attorney. Identifying workforce-related costs and nuances in local labor laws before you sign a lease. That is how HR proves its strategic value.
Let's pivot to the mechanics of the test itself. When you are staring at those situational judgment items, they often ask you to choose the most effective or least effective response.
The dreaded most and least effective.
Yeah, and the hardest ones involve managing contradictory practices, right? Like a clash between a religious dress code and a company's safety protocol.
In those cross-cultural conflict scenarios, you need a reliable framework. Step one is always gathering data from the individuals directly involved. Never assume you understand their cultural drivers.
Okay, step one, gather data.
Step two is examining the common ground between the conflicting viewpoints. And step three is involving those same individuals in discussions, with HR playing the facilitation role.
The facilitation role,
Yeah.
not the dictator role.
Exactly, because a facilitator builds a sustainable framework, whereas a dictator just creates a compliance headache that will inevitably fracture.
Right.
You're interceding to find a resolution that fits the entire organization. You're respecting individual cultural expectations while preserving the employer's operational needs. Dictating a policy from the top down without consultation is almost always the least effective choice.
Let's apply this to a classic scenario. Gift giving. Say you are an HR executive prepping a sales team for international meetings. In Japan, meeting a potential partner for the first time, it is customary to present a small, thoughtful gift.
But if you take that exact same strategy to Germany, the UK, or Belgium, gifts are seldom presented and can actually trigger anti-bribery compliance alarms.
Oh, wow. Or cause deep offense.
Exactly. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, diving straight into a business agenda without significant small talk and relationship building is considered incredibly rude.
It's a minefield.
It is. The best answer on the exam reflects thorough pre-research. You have to adapt your style based on whether you're communicating with an explicit or implicit culture, or whether their leadership style is egalitarian or hierarchical.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This is where the theory hits the pavement. Let's frame up some high-stakes boardroom dilemmas. We are going to walk through 3 SCP-level scenarios. I'll lay out the business problem, and you dismantle the distractors and show us the strategic solution.
All right, let's dive in.
Dilemma 1. Global paid time off. You're the VP of HR expanding operations into Europe and Asia. Your CEO wants to streamline global payroll by standardizing benefits. Specifically, they want to offer the U.S. standard of 0 legally mandated paid vacation days to all new global employees and just supplement it with the discretionary company PTO plan. What is your strategic response?
Well, if you agree to standardize the U.S. policy, you immediately fail the question.
Right off the bat.
Yep. The distractor here is the appeal of administrative simplicity. The reality is that the United States is the only country with an advanced economy that does not guarantee paid vacation.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. The correct SCP-level answer involves conducting due diligence on local labor laws and aligning your benefit strategy accordingly. For example, Germany and Spain mandate 34 days of paid vacation and holidays.
34 days.
Yeah. Japan requires 10. The European Union requires a minimum of 4 weeks. If you try to force U.S. standards, you aren't just culturally insensitive, you are legally non-compliant. You're facing massive fines, and you're destroying your employer brand before you even open your doors.
Incredible. Okay, dilemma 2. Maximum work hours. You're setting up a new manufacturing plant in Mexico. To maximize output and justify the real estate investment, the operations director wants to implement standard 10-hour shifts 6 days a week. What is the fatal flaw in this plan?
Another major trap, based on U.S.-centric assumptions. You cannot assume U.S. overtime rules, like the Fair Labor Standards Act, apply globally.
So what's the rule in Mexico?
The Mexican Constitution establishes a strict maximum of 8 work hours for shift workers, a maximum of 7 hours for the night shift, and it completely caps overtime. Plus, for every 6 days of work, Mexico's workers must have 1 full day off.
Wow, so 10-hour shifts are completely off the table.
Completely illegal there. If HR doesn't catch this, and operations builds a production forecast based on illegal 10-hour shifts, the entire supply chain model collapses. The strategic HR action is consulting local labor council to adjust workforce planning before the operational models are finalized.
That proves exactly why HR must be at the strategic table from day one. All right, dilemma 3. Cross-cultural trust building. You are an HR leader who just acquired an international team. Trust is totally non-existent, and miscommunications are happening daily via email and video calls. Operations are stalling. What is your very first step to bridge the gap?
So the distractor here is usually a heavy-handed, impersonal corporate intervention like mandating a weekend communication seminar for everybody.
Right, the classic let's do a workshop.
Exactly. The correct answer actually relies on Juliet C. Mayer's framework for building cross-cultural partnerships.
Okay, how does that work?
Your first step is to seek to understand through credible sources and to start with who you know inside the organization to gain context. But most importantly, when those miscommunications inevitably occur, you must assume positive intent.
Assume positive intent.
Yes, you don't jump to the conclusion that the new team is being obstinate or difficult. You assume the communication barrier is a process issue, not a character flaw.
Assume positive intent. It sounds simple, but it completely changes the dynamic of a conflict. So if you're a candidate listening to this, you have to ask yourself, when cultures clash in my organization, do I immediately retreat to the safety of the company handbook, or do I step into the tension and act as a facilitator? Because the exam is clearly looking for the facilitator.
Always. The handbook is a tool, but facilitation is the strategy.
To ensure we completely ace this section on test day, let's condense these strategies into a rapid-fire exam playbook. Give us the absolute must-remember tips for the global mindset competency.
Okay, tip number 1. Know the models. The exam won't ask you to write a thesis, but if you see names like Hall, Hofstede, Schein, or Trompenars in a question, you need to know how they apply to workplace friction.
Can we break one of those down? Because just recognizing the name Hofstede doesn't help me solve a scenario.
Absolutely. Let's take Hofstede's dimension of power distance.
Power distance, okay.
This measures how a culture views inequality and hierarchy. In a high power distance culture, employees expect leaders to be authoritative. They won't challenge a manager's idea in a brainstorm because it's seen as deeply disrespectful.
So they just stay quiet?
Right. So if a U.S. manager coming from a low power distance culture goes into that office and expects a collaborative egalitarian whiteboard session, they will be met with silence.
And they might think the team is disengaged.
Exactly. A culturally intelligent HR leader recognizes that friction isn't a lack of engagement. It's a clash of power distance norms, and they adjust the meeting structure accordingly.
That makes total sense. You adapt the process to the cultural reality. What's tip number 2?
Bridge differences tactically. Look for answers that utilize structured interventions like employee resource groups, reverse mentorship, and focus groups.
Reverse mentorship is an interesting one.
It's especially powerful in global contexts. Pairing a senior executive in the U.S. headquarters with a junior employee in a newly opened foreign market allows the executive to gain unfiltered, ground-level cultural insight while developing the junior employee's leadership visibility. It's a win-win.
Love that. Okay, tip 3 is all about the calendar minding the holidays.
Local needs dictate holidays, and ignoring them causes massive operational friction. Globally, observances vary wildly. Like in Brazil, they observe the June bonfire festivals, Festus Juninus, and celebrate the goddess of the sea.
Which is very different from the U.S. calendar.
Completely. If you schedule a mandatory global all-hands meeting or a critical product launch during a deeply held local observance, you are sending a clear message that the home office does not respect the local workforce. You have to account for local cultural and religious observances when managing global timelines.
And tip number 4, maintain economic awareness. You cannot operate HR in a vacuum. You have to maintain expert knowledge of global economic trends.
Right. How inflation, currency fluctuations, or supply chain disruptions impact the specific countries you operate in. You have to anchor your strategic contributions to actual business realities.
Before we wrap up this playbook, I need one unforgettable anchor image for this competency. We've talked a lot about strategy and data, but there is an incredible story in the research about JetBlue.
Oh, this is the ultimate example of humility, which is really the secret engine of a global mindset.
Walk us through it.
So David Neeleman, the founder and former CEO of JetBlue Airlines, possessed the self-awareness to learn from every level of his organization. He actually spent one day each week flying on his own planes.
But not in first class, right?
No. He wasn't sitting in first class reviewing quarterly reports. He was collaborating directly with his crew, serving passengers drinks and snacks, and physically cleaning the cabins between flights.
The CEO of a major airline physically cleaning planes, what was the downstream impact of that?
The impact on the employer brand was unprecedented. 2 years after JetBlue was founded, they needed to hire 2,000 new employees to support their growth.
2000, okay.
Because the word had spread about Neeleman's leadership style and the culture of mutual respect he built, they received an astounding 130,000 employment applications for those 2,000 spots.
130,000 applications. That is the ultimate ROI on a culturally intelligent, humble leadership model.
Humility is defined as letting your actions speak for themselves and not believing you are more important than the people executing the work. This raises an important question for the exam. Under the intense time pressure of the test, you have to ask yourself, are you selecting the answer that relies on rigid, top-down authority, or are you actively seeking the answer that embraces inclusion, adaptability, and humility?
That is the mindset shift.
That mindset shift is the key to mastering this competency.
With this playbook, you are fully armed to tackle global and cultural effectiveness on the SHRM SCP exam. But more importantly, true cultural effectiveness isn't just about passing a multiple-choice test. It's about gaining a legitimate, measurable competitive edge in a deeply interconnected global market.
It's about building a sustainable framework where diverse talent can actually thrive, which is exactly what the modern enterprise desperately needs.
As we sign off, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought from the source text regarding the global economic outlook. We are living in an era where converging issues are completely rewriting the rules of business. Technology and artificial intelligence are advancing at an unprecedented breakneck rate. Individuals are quick to adopt these innovations.
But organizations are not.
Exactly. Organizations adapt much slower, and public policy and labor laws move at an absolute snail's pace. We are managing modern, borderless workforces using industrial-age regulatory structures. It is this exact widening gap between rapid technological change and slow public policy that creates a massive opportunity for HR professionals.
You're the bridge.
You are the critical bridge.
Right.
You are the one who can help leaders adapt to new models of global work before the competition does. The exam is just the baseline. The real question is, how will you step into that gap and lead?